Supposedly, everyone loves a surprise. Well, nobody really likes an October surprise during a presidential election race. However, we've had October surprises in the past, and some of them could be devastating. Hi, I'm Bob Mann, and this is the October 2024 episode of Hot Media. Every month on this program, we talk about the hottest, most important issues in media. And when we talk about politics and journalism, our go-to guy is Rem Rieder, who is joining us. Rem is, if you watch this or listen to this podcast, you know that Rem is on here on a regular basis. Former editor at large and media columnist for USA Today and former editor and senior VP at the American Journalism Review. Rem has also taught at Widener University in Pennsylvania, a swing state, which is important. Rem, we had you in August, and it's appropriate to have you back on in October to talk about possible surprises and more. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Bob. Thank you.
Let's open up with the idea of an October surprise. We've heard it before. Comey saying that he was going to investigate Hillary Clinton in October of the 2016 election, of course, was huge. What do you feel is the possibility of an October surprise? Is it something for anyone, any candidate on any side to be worried about?
Well, since it's by nature a surprise, I can't say that I know what it's going to be or if there will be one. As you say,
based on what it has been in the past, I would say that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they can play a big role. As I think you're right, in 2016, Comey's announcement about Hillary Clinton and an email at the very last minute played a big role. There's a sense that it would have to be quite a huge surprise indeed to have a huge impact, because I think feelings are pretty well locked in, particularly about Donald Trump. I mean, we've seen this now for 9 years or whatever it is, where there are disclosures about Trump that in years past would have destroyed a mere mortal candidate, and they haven't really put much of a dent in Trump. So it takes a lot to, there are an awful lot of people who really like him and support him. There are a lot of people who detest him and don't. There is that small group in the middle, the undecideds, of course, who would be susceptible to that. But in the case of Trump, the bar has been raised pretty high. We had something, not really an October surprise, but a late September release of prosecutor Jack Smith's details about his case. Some of them pretty damning about Trump, but I don't have any sense they're going to move the needle in a major way. Now, with Kamala Harris, who's less known to much of the public. I mean, everyone's less known than Donald Trump. With Harris, maybe there's something that would come up and really hurt her. Who knows? But
especially since people say they don't know enough about her or who she is, I think she could be vulnerable to it. As far as releasing the January 6th information, though, first of all, I don't see that prosecutor as being political by nature. But also, anybody who really is really devoted to Trump, has a totally different version of what January 6th was the rest of us.
That's exactly right. I mean, I never thought we'd come to a state like this where Trump calls the people who have been prosecuted for the role in the rioting at the Capitol hostages, and the tone of a lot of the Republicans as well. That's in the past. It was a pretty monumental event in the past, I would say. But I think your point is very well taken. I also agree with you that I don't think Jack Smith is political. In fact, the reason this came out now is because of the Supreme Court ruling on immunity and pushing things back, and then the judge in the case giving a deadline to Smith to release this. So, I don't think there's politics there. But yeah, we're getting pretty close to the election. Something from out of the blue, we'll just have to see.
Let me talk to you not as a journalist or as a professor, but as someone who lives in a swing state. Here in the New York market, we're seeing political ads for both sides, but pretty much New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, it's pretty clear where they're going to be going in November. But in Pennsylvania, it could be the most important of the swing states, certainly one of them. What are you seeing on the TV in terms of the ads? I mean, Kamala is asking me for more money every day in a text. This is, she must spend it at some place. What are Trump and Kamala Harris's campaign showing you, the voters of Pennsylvania?
Well, the airwaves, as you would quite imagine, are saturated with these ads. I mean, you can't watch the local news without commercial breaks with ad after ad, maybe sprinkle in a Senate ad, and a lot of the Harris ads focusing on the fact that Trump is a danger to democracy and someone can't be trusted in the White House. A lot of the pro-Trump ads portraying Harris as way too far left and out of the mainstream. But yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a financial boon for local television stations. I'll tell you that, because that's you can't get away from these ads.
What's really interesting is that we're recording this in early October, and we're in the middle of the Major League Baseball playoff. In Mets Milwaukee Brewers game, for some reason, ESPN was carrying nationally. I'm in northern New Jersey, right outside New York City. They're nationally carrying Wisconsin congressional ads. I guess they were worth putting on. That's the only place the Wisconsin people can see it. Some of those are bizarre, and it seems even more bizarre when we're detached from that part of the country and from who these people are and what the issues are. Over and over again, talking about our Wisconsin values, whether those were dog whistles or not. It's even stranger to look at it from the outside looking in. It is being here just outside the area where the mayor is under indictment. It's very strange. Let's talk a little bit about the fact that debates seem to be over. Kamala Harris wants to debate. Donald Trump does not, saying it's too late for whatever reason. The very civil debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz is over. Without debates, are debates overrated? Are we going into this final month in almost a zone of just leaping to the finish line?
I don't know if debates are overrated. And I guess the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, we've seen this time around probably the most consequential debate ever, in that Joe Biden's performance in the first debate against Trump led to his leaving the race. It led to kind of a shock, a mass shock at what seemed to be his mental state, and a very aggressive effort.
Let his own party to drive him out. Really, I mean, there couldn't be you're right. It couldn't be a more consequential debate result.
That's right. The Democrats basically said we can't win this, and they went into overdrive, often behind the scenes. There was enormous media coverage, both of the discontent of the Democrats and on the question of what's going on in Joe Biden's mind. And so it led to a change in the ticket. But on the other hand, the debate between Trump and Kamala Harris, I think it's widely agreed that Harris cleaned Trump's clock. She was very, very good. She has a tendency, as you know, sometimes in interviews to speak in what the cliche today is word salad, empty with kind of a lot of empty words. But she was really sharp and aggressive and got under Trump's skin. And Trump was never good. And yet it really didn't have a dramatic effect, certainly on the polls. And that, that's another whole question about the reliability of the polls. But I don't think it had nearly the impact you might have guessed that it would. And then, which brings us to what maybe probably is the final debate between the two vice presidential candidates. And I guess the conventional wisdom is that vice presidential debates, are unlikely to have an impact at all, really, on the result. I mean, it was kind of an interesting evening in that J.D. Vance very much it seemed like rather than scoring points for Trump, he was there to kind of rehabilitate his image, since he's kind of been a hatchet man on the trail. That he was very smooth, I have to say, very smooth and conciliatory. And I thought Walz was kind of disappointing throughout it. To me, he looked nervous for some of it and awkward. And really, it's great, the civility and the effort to find common ground. But this is not that kind of election. And I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity till near the end when he confronted Vance on the idea of, well, do you agree that Biden won the last election? And he sidestepped the question kind of pathetically. And Walz seemed actually legitimately angry and kind of called him on it.
Right. Well, saying something like, I guess that's why Mike Pence is not standing on this podium right now, running for vice president. Because
quite good. And to me, I mean, in terms of who scored points, I thought Vance was much better. But what do I know? The polls found it was kind of 50-50. And so, I mean, certainly that debate, I don't think will have much impact. Probably if there was another Trump Harris debate closer to the event, maybe. But one thing, impact or no impact, they are pretty revealing, and I still think it's very much in the public interest to have them.
So it's going to be news coverage. It's going to be reaction to things that are happening in the news. How would you handle the Middle East? How would you handle disaster recovery? These news stories, I guess, will be driving an awful lot too. They talk an awful lot about earned media and, what you do going out and dealing with the news. And Kamala Harris still is vice president of the United States. And while Biden is president, she is going to bear the mark of this administration for better or for worse. So I guess the day-to-day news story too, such as the expansion of the war in the Middle East and the devastation in North Carolina, really will be driving them to a great deal. How are they going to react? Where are they going to go? Are they going to look as if they are exploiting the situation? I want to talk about polls, though, for a second, because I got turned off to polls. My friend Dan Casino, who is a pollster, will be mad at me for having said this, but since they said that Hillary Clinton had it in the bag in 2016, but the one thing that you mentioned to me before we started recording was that there's a real disconnect in these polls between people's perception about what our economy is and what the reality of that happens to be.
Right. I mean, polls are good for it. I'm glad you brought that up. Polls are good for the horse race, but also are very interesting for questions like that gauge public opinion. And there are a lot of big caveats there, man. I know what you mean about, losing a great deal of faith in the polls then. And there's a whole question now of who in this age, who answers a cell phone call from somebody a number they don't recognize. So
or a landline call, even better that they have a landline. What's the demographic?
I'm sorry, what is a landline? Could you help me with that?
Well, it's what we used to use on this show, actually, before we started using the video app.
Yeah, those rotary phones kept you in shape. The effort of pushing them around.
I had a little thing on the pencil that would actually turn them. Go ahead, Rem.
As usual, you're way ahead of me. I think to me, it's a fascinating point. It's the recovery from the economic problems of the pandemic has been remarkable. And at this point, if you look at the growth of the economy, the recovery of the economy, it's very, very strong. We've recovered much better than other nations. And right now, by objective measures, the economy is doing wonderfully. And Biden has gotten virtually no credit for that. And there's some reasons for that. One of them is, there's inflation, which actually, is a worldwide problem. It's, not really, so many of these things are not something a president has a huge effect on, but inflation has now come way down. But I think grocery prices play a big role in this, that people feel, like things are not so good. But what
reinforced every week.
Yeah. Now gasoline prices have gone way down. Overall prices have gone down. But a big question that comes up is Well, has the media done and the news media done an adequate job of reflecting the fact that the economy is pretty good? And you know how it goes historically. When gas prices were going through the roof, there was tons of TV coverage of that, and when they're going down, it's an invisible story. Um, but there's also the question of how much does media coverage shape what people think? I mean, we now have such a divided electorate, and there are a lot of Trump supporters who don't believe the media, so it wouldn't really matter what the New York Times said about anything. There are also a lot of critics on the left who don't have much faith in the media, and there's the overriding problem, not problem, just reality, that social media has such a growing impact on shaping public opinion, and the traditional top-down media, their role has really been diminished.
Right. And you're going to stay in that bubble and, listen to even the wildest conspiracy theories without anyone to refute it. I want to wrap up with one thing. One of the things that you really drove home to me years ago in our first interviews was the importance of fact checking. And the commentators, the moderators from the major news networks, ABC and CBS, who sponsored the presidential and vice presidential debates, were in a situation in which they did fact checking. For example, no dogs and cats being eaten in Springfield, Ohio. And it was spun by the Trump campaign that this was just an example of the bias of the media against Donald Trump and against MAGA. But it's fact checking. Is it appropriate? Is it effective? Is it the right thing to do to fact check in real time on a show like that? I mean, it's fact checking, and it is something that they checked with the town in Ohio. So my question is, is it a real time thing that should be done?
Well, I think it has to be done very carefully. I guess my main answer is yes. I think it's the responsibility of this reason to have journalists conducting these things. Otherwise, you could have anybody be the host. I think it's an abdication not to. In fact, for the vice presidential debate, the decision was not to fact check. But at one point, there was something so egregious that one of the moderators jumped in there and said that the people, the Haitians in Springfield, were there legally. And that's the thing that the Trump campaign is quite foul about. The previous campaign or previous debate, the Harris-Trump debate, the moderators did some fact checking and did it well, I thought, and they did it seamlessly. There's the danger if you fact check everything, it's just going to bog everything down and you won't have a debate, you won't have a conversation. The other thing is as you know, I spent a year fact checking at factcheck.org after I left USA Today. And one of the things, there are a lot of questions that are pretty nuanced. They don't necessarily lend themselves to a quick, that's wrong, that's right. It's made their gray areas. And the other thing is they take some time to research. On the other hand, there's some things that are very clear cut. And in the case of Trump, he's made the same lies, misstatements, however you want to characterize over and over for years. So they've been fact checked to death. And they're the easy ones. And just the fact that, yes, the Haitians are there legally. No, there's no indication of the Haitians eating dogs or geese or whatever it is. So I think in those instances, it's appropriate to do. And in the second, in the Harris-Trump debate, I think we saw just how good it can be. But I think it is the responsibility to try to do it.
Rem, I thank you always for being here on Hot Media. You always bring great perspective. And I guess the next time we talk, what at least happened on November 5th, what will happen in the aftermath? Well, that's a whole different story. Rem, if you'll just hang on after I actually sign off here from the video, because of the fact that I do want to talk to you off the air. But I thank everyone for watching the full version on YouTube and the edited version in the audio podcast of Hot Media. We're with you every single month to look at the media. We've been very political, of course, this year because this is one of the most hotly contested and important elections that has ever been. Please go to my website to find out more about the podcast, bobmanhotmedia.com. And thank you very much for listening and watching on a regular basis. And we'll see you next month.